Hello everyone, I'm Jonathan, also known as the Medieval Genie, and apologies for my dishevelled look, but I've just come from the workshop finishing this, which is basically my attempt at a Baselard. Well, I actually attempted something else, and that went wrong and turned into this in the end, but I'll tell you more about that in the later sections. Now, I don't want to bore you guys, I'll have the in-depth description right at the end, and if you're interested I can talk more in depth about how I made this, the things that went right, the things that went wrong, and information about its construction. But for now, let's just test this thing and see how it holds up. Now it's a double-edged, pointy thing, just like a Baselard should be. It's got a nice cut mechanic with it forcing against the hand here and here for that leverage, and it will stab quite nicely if it's acute point, as you can see, very nice. So I hope that it does alright, but I've never tried it out yet, so let's find out. So that's the result of that. Like its maker, it is short and ugly, but it does the job when required. So, with regards to the design, obviously I've done a double edge and gradual taper, most especially because I had so little material. I thought I want to get the maximum blade length that's reasonable while not sacrificing its sort of cutting and thrusting ability, and I thought this is the best way I could do it. I've got some breadth back here, so it's got some strength as well as cutting ability. Excuse me, because I don't really want to have the slender thrusting blades like you'd see on a rapier. No offence to people who like those designs, it's not my cup of tea, and I don't feel confident I could do one yet that wouldn't potentially snap in half, because I'd want quite the flex temper or such stiffness that it really isn't going to give, and that's a bit iffy for me. So I've gone with this design instead, and it's accidentally become a Baselard because I intended these fittings, which are made from a sort of tire iron, I was forging out, was going to make a candle holder, and I had that it was convenient material, I could just cut it off and then punch holes, and it's pretty much done already. The forging's been completed, no need to start from the beginning. Handle is made of sapling ash, by the way, sort of a branch I found, and did a burn through tang. Peened on at the back, you can see here, admittedly a bit crudely, but also a bit of the reason why it rattles so much. But it was originally supposed to be sort of like a Viking Saxon style one-handed sword, which would mean potentially a 24, 26, 28 inch blade. But the original material I used cracked. Let me show you. So here it is. This is the piece I was going to use. It's the same as what I've used for a blade now, which is spring steel from a leaf spring that I got, and this part, it was still the full width, whereas I usually like to take an angle grinder and cut it in half. So trying to forge it out, it's ended up with loads of cracks. I'll see if I can show you close up. I've got my fingers next to the cracks. Yeah, you can barely see them, but there are, what, 1, 2, 3, arguably 4 or 5 different cracks in there. So if I'd forged a blade out from this and hardened and tempered it, it would have all been wasted, because this is right on a shoulder as well, where it takes a lot of strain. So I could have hit and then snap, would have been buggered, basically. But it's a shame because it's about 1.5 times the weight. Now, bearing in mind I would have had exactly the same tang, a proper sort of thick, gradually tapering sword tang, it would have all, pretty much all, translated to blade length, so it would have been probably about 1.5 times the blade length. But unfortunately not the case. So instead I've ended up using the other smaller piece of the leaf spring instead. Going back to this, so it's ended up actually surprisingly sharp. I was worried that, especially, this is my one of my first double-edged blades. The ones I've done before, even including a Langsax, you know, I've done longer blades, but never double-edged blades. And the only one I've done before properly was a letter opener for my mother, which obviously isn't supposed to be a properly sharp item. So it was difficult trying to make sure I grind the bevels in and get it with a general taper. It's more of a, I think it's called lenticular cross-section in the blade, so it doesn't have a proper ridge. It sort of just is like the brow of a hill. It goes smoothly over, but there's still a thicker part in the middle, and it gradually bevels out. But it's more distinctly so it's a bit stiffer, which means that it has a bit more resistance and doesn't give as much when doing the cut or the thrust. Very useful. And of course, I've made sure to harden it and temper it properly as well. So it's turned out alright. Of course, it rattles quite a bit because the burn through ended up burning around the sides in the handle material, and it was an obscenely difficult job peening the pommel on. I can hardly describe how much trouble I had getting that to work, and it almost didn't in the end. So, yes, overall, it has accidentally ended up becoming a Baselard, because with these types of hilt, making that H kind of look, and of course with that short sword, long knife type of proportion, double-edged, gradually tapering, starting from broad and getting to quite narrow, it has happened to work in those proportions, because I made it quite narrow at the tip because I needed to stretch as much blade length as I could get reasonably for the material, which meant it was going to end up with a narrow point. So I had to do that type of cross-section almost instinctively from drawing the metal out. Overall though, it seems to have turned out alright. The blade turned out fantastically, I must say. It's just a shame that with the pommel, crossguard and the handle all constructed together, it's turned out a bit rickety and a bit ugly in the end. But, I mean, for a first time try of this type of construction, I'm quite happy that it's ended up like that, that it has not completely fallen to pieces. So, there we are. That's the Baselard that I've made. Tell me your thoughts in the comments and what sword you might see next, and there's a tiny chance I might make it. See you later. Goodbye.